Welcome everyone to another episode of Safe Passages. I'm your host, Tara Jabari, and today today my guest is Alex. Her Substack is Alex and Beyond. She worked in user research and she was helping companies in the tech industry understand what to build and how to build it based on unmet user needs. After 15 years, she is concentrating more on her travel vlog and blog, where she offers catered guides that offer the focus on the places that are actually worth your time and appetite, plus are dog friendly. Welcome to the show, Alex.
Thanks for having me. Happy to be here, Tara.
I'm so excited. You've been on Substack for a little over a year? Or the
Almost a
oldest
year
post?
now. I think
Okay.
like August I started, I think.
Got it. Okay. So yeah, because the oldest post I found was in August. So I was like, really? But your YouTube channel has been around for longer, and it's been really cool. And did you guys go from a different name?
Yeah,
Turks that
so
eat.
yeah, exactly. My husband and I started a food blog actually originally probably 8 or 9 years ago now, and that was called Turks Who Eat, and we did like a lot of recipes based on the places that we had traveled and places that we loved. And then eventually we turned that into an actual vlog instead of a blog and started doing video content. But then, my husband's Turkish. I'm not Turkish. The name was catchy, but we didn't feel like it totally fit both of us. So we changed the name to Alex and Mehmet, and just a little bit simpler. And that's what our YouTube is under now.
Yeah, it's still great. And I was watching a couple of videos. We'll get to that. But first, I wanted to go back a little chronologically. So you were sharing with me that you had studied public policy and then moved to Washington, D.C. I also lived in Washington, D.C. But you started working with tech companies. And I was wondering if you can share how the tech industry and public policy and politics and the individual's vote really mesh together, like how important it is from your experience. Can you kind of touch on
Yeah,
that?
sure. Yeah. So I did major in public policy, moved to DC with the intention of working in government, but I had student loans. I had to kind of take a job pretty quickly, and I ended up finding a job with a tech startup at the time. And I ended up really loving working there, really loving being in tech and understanding that. And yeah, I think through the different jobs I've had a lot of experience to try and understand how policy impacts tech and tech impacts policy, and how there's it's one of the, I think, undercovered stakeholders. So we think a lot about the end consumer, the person who is consuming the business, but especially in the past, 5 to 10 years with the implementation of things like GDPR and CCPA and a lot more data privacy coming to the forefront, there's been a lot more need for tech companies, I think, to understand policymakers and policymakers to understand technology and kind of figure out how we can bridge those two without really while maintaining a good experience for the end user still. Sorry, does that actually cover what you were hoping for? I
Yeah,
might have
so in
gone
more
on tangent.
layman's terms, I think here's what I keep hearing. They're like, oh, well, the tech, everyone knows everything anyway. So why should I even bother?
Mm,
I accept all of those cookies and stuff like that. Versus when there's the required ones, and then they're like, by the way, you're letting us use everything for marketing stuff. I usually look through those, and we're right now recording in Europe, and the EU tends to be a lot more transparent about we're doing it for
yeah,
advertising and marketing and this and this and this and this. Those you can say no to, right? And I tend to say no to those, only
yeah,
required. And so I was like, those are small things that you actually can control. It's the same reason why
yeah,
people are like, oh, we should eat more vegetables. We should take the stairs. It's better for the
yeah.
environment and it's better for us. Otherwise, yes, we all die. So why not be lazy?
Inevitable. Yeah,
Why not just have all the Nutella?
exactly.
So could you kind of share in layman's terms of why that's important, or do you really have an influence in that? when it comes to how much, as an individual,
Mhm.
as the consumer, to a tech company or to politicians to be like, oh, this is what we should be paying more attention to.
Yeah, I think there's been a greater understanding lately about all of the ways that companies are using your data. I think, probably 10 years ago, the end consumer wasn't even aware that a lot of this stuff was happening. And now,
Yeah.
especially, now that we do have to make those selections on different types of cookies and things, people are a lot more aware. And I think it's really up to the individual. So I think if, it's good to be informed on the type of data that companies might be gathering from you and how they might use that. And to make a decision, like sometimes people are okay with that. I think it's in some of the research I've done for my work, I've heard people who really like personalized ads and have found, great products from that. And other people have a different type of mindset where they really don't want their information used for any type of advertising. So I think it's more about just being informed about what's being collected and how it's being used and making that decision for yourself. And I mean, that might even vary from one website or
Mm.
one app to another. You might be more comfortable with one thing sharing or taking your information than another thing. Or one thing I've also learned a lot from my research is it depends a lot on the value that you get out of it. So someone
Mm.
might be okay with sharing more information if they're getting more value in return. But if it's more one-sided and the company is just gathering and selling that and you're not really getting any additional value as the end consumer, then I think people are more hesitant to actually want to give away their information.
So when you were talking about like as a user research, does this mean that when a person puts something online, like you and me or anyone, the people like you in your job would take all that information and then give it to their clients, and then those companies will then be like, this is how we can sell them to influence their shopping and even up to their voting, like their habits, right? Is that sort of what you would do?
Not quite exactly. So, as a researcher, I would normally try to understand people's behaviors and unmet needs. I think a simple example I can give is when I was working at Spotify, we really wanted to understand how people consume audio content and understand where are there gaps in the product offering that we could maybe meet those needs. So we focused a lot on understanding how people listen to content, say in their home or in their car, and then develop products around that. So it's not necessarily always about, trying to sell something. And I think that goes back to what I was saying about value a little bit, like understand what people are doing and then create something that can add value in those moments. For me, at least, that's what I found
Yeah.
most, interesting and fulfilling about research.
I have spoken to some people who do sort of that. Um, we were trying to schedule for them to come on Safe Passages
Cool.
because they were arguing that it's actually useful when you might need something that the company offers that would help simplify your life, right? So,
Yeah, exactly.
but there's also the dangers of it, which I remember, when the 2016 election results came about, and then there were a couple of documentaries like Cambridge Analytica and all that stuff. And
Yeah.
they're like, you mean to tell me you used my Facebook to influence me to be more towards, let's say, Trump versus Clinton at the time, right? And all that, and people were blown away. Meanwhile, I was like, "That's news to you? You didn't realize that?" So, so sometimes people need to really understand it, and they don't. And so that's why I was wondering, in your experience, yours is not. That's why I wanted to clarify what you meant by
Sure.
user research. But people do use that for pros and for cons. There's always a little bit of that invasiveness, but
Mhm.
there's also nothing to really protect you. So could you kind of touch on what have you noticed people do that you're like, that's probably not a safe move? Like you're sharing a lot.
Oh, interesting. So yeah, I don't know if it's more of just a personal thing, but I personally don't share a lot of information about myself online. Like I share my travels and I share,
Right.
kind of it's basic stuff, but I would never share, exactly where I live or take pictures in a place that gives away like where I live. I think another common one is like never post something when you're in a place because people then might know that your
Mm.
home is empty or, there's always people out there you don't know exactly what their intentions are. So maybe you don't want them to know where you are at a specific time or where you're going next week. So I think like location-based stuff is really important to be aware of. And I think people more and more are understanding like, oh, how this information could be used in potentially a nefarious way and being more careful about that. So those are the things that I really tend to look out for, like location, where I am, and just like kind of, there's a level that you still want to keep personal and secret.
Yeah, it is hard because I've spoken to a few influencers, for instance,
Mhm.
particularly female influencers. It's a little bit more, fortunately, dangerous for
Yeah.
them, where they will post about an event after the fact because
Yeah.
they have had situations where someone will show up and it made them uncomfortable. But if it's more of like a public, like if you're at a concert, well, it's a very
Sure.
crowded area and
Yeah.
they can't really tell where exactly you are or, it's moving. Um, but if it's more like, or if you're at you're the main speaker, well, you want
Of
people to know
course.
about it,
Yeah.
but it's in a public place, like a Barnes and Noble, in Union Square in New York City. There's safety in numbers kind of thing. But for instance, I'm in Paris. Where in Paris? None of your
Exactly.
beeswax.
Yeah.
So, and this comes out a month later. So
Exactly.
I
Yeah.
won't be in Paris.
Of
But
course.
that kind of thing. Especially with younger people, though, I just spoke with a friend of mine whose 13-year-old had put his cell phone number in roadblocks. And
Oh,
he was starting to get texts and like all sorts of stuff. And young people don't have that kind of thing. But when I would teach social media etiquette and stuff, I was like, your report card, you want to show that you got straight A's. Congratulations. No one needs to know the name of the school. Bam,
exactly.
tells you your location. Um, really, you don't need to say which classes,
Yep.
honestly. You might want to. I wouldn't, but and also just like little things, or if you're doing a group thing at a park, does it show a street sign in the background? Do you see the name of the park? But if you just see swings and trees, that's pretty generic,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
So, and you don't need to do a location tag. No one needs to know those kinds of things because why are you sharing it and when are you sharing it and where and all that stuff. All of those, and I said, especially for minors, you might not be able to vote, but your
Yeah.
parents are, and you're a reflection of your parents, and then so forth and so forth. So it's those kinds of little things that people, if you're not careful, it's like, oh, I could have taken the stairs. Oh, I keep having a croissant every day for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and I could have had a
You can,
carrot,
yep.
and that's why I'm huffing and puffing when I do take the stairs. Those little things add up. So, um, in that case, do you have any go-to recommendations of what to do to stay more mindful, resources for people to stay kind of more mindful and safe and up to date on technology and things like that?
Yeah, I think it's tough because technology is changing so much and,
Yeah.
it's really hard sometimes to know what has changed and keep up with things. So, um, I think in some ways actually as even though this might seem counterintuitive, like tools like ChatGPT might actually be able to help a bit. If you
Okay.
don't want to read through all the terms and conditions on something, who really is
Yeah.
ever going to do that? You could upload that and ask it if there's anything particular that you should look out for. I know, I've done that before with certain long documents that I'm just either don't have the time to read or don't have the legal expertise to actually understand. So I think using technology to our advantage in that way can help you at least understand what's being used and how it's being used and give you, I guess, a more informed choice, or help you make a more informed choice on that.
Well, thank you for that. now let's get to more of your recent work, which now is called
Sure.
Alex and Beyond. So you started on YouTube and then you decided to cut on Substack.
Yep.
And what I liked is, and you started doing guides through it as well, or was the guides for your website first and then Substack to do more of the posts?
I
How
started
did you?
doing the guides on Substack, and then I also posted them to my website as well because I know not everyone wants to be a subscriber.
Right. And what I liked about it is you worded it as your guides. Think of them as a list I text a friend before they
Yeah.
travel. So that's lovely. And then you and your husband, it seems like you guys decided to concentrate on a few things. The food, it seems a little bit more like also wine is included in there,
Yeah.
and the dog friendly because you do travel to over 20 countries with your dog, Bindi. And
Yes.
how did you guys decide on those kinds of concentrations?
Honestly, we just wanted to capture what was important to us. So whenever I travel, I'm traveling for food a lot of the time. I think especially when I first started traveling, the destinations I picked, they were because I wanted to eat there. And that's kind of what's kept me traveling. And I think for me, the best part of travel is food, honestly. And it's also how you can connect to the culture. So I think, food says a lot about the history of a place, the people of the place. It's a big, easy connector. People will love to talk to you about the food, and producers or restaurateurs will love to tell you about a dish. Same with wineries. If you go visit a winery, they're so proud to tell you about the grapes that grow in their region and why they grow there and how they're important. So I just wanted to create content about things that are important to me, and food and travel and wine and my dog. Those are, the top three or four things to me.
Yeah. And people seem to really connect to it. And so also what I liked, and you do a really good, clever way of doing this, which is you always link to previous posts. So I was like looking through it, and you're like, in the fall, these are places that you should also consider visiting. In the summer, all the, people keep thinking of Paris or
Yeah.
Amsterdam or London, but you were like, also check these places out. And one of them was, okay, is it Ghent, Belgium?
Yeah. Yeah.
Ah,
Get.
nice. And it's also your number one video, which I didn't know that until
Yeah.
later. But I kept finding it, and I liked it. I haven't been there, but you said best chocolate. Like, what was it? It was like the best chocolate without the Swiss price tag, and I'm like,
Yes.
done,
Yeah.
done. It's on my list.
Yeah. The
So
chocolate
those.
shops there are incredible.
How do you find these places? I know you guys now live in Europe, so it's a little bit easier to travel around those areas and do those little side trips and stuff. But in originally, like, how do you find these things?
The destinations or the specific like
Yeah,
restaurants, the destinations. Um,
destinations, and then and then if you can, I don't want to
sure.
take your job away.
Yeah. No, no worries. So one thing I do a lot actually is I think when I'm bored, I just go on like Airbnb and I'll put in a not very specific area or just look at a place on the map and start looking for places that look beautiful, and I'm less concerned about the destination and where they actually are rather than like, oh, if I can have a sea view or this really cool apartment or this like very nice
Hmm.
architecturally designed place. And that's honestly how I've discovered a lot of really cool lesser known cities, is just by being like, okay, let me look at this section of Italy and see what's here. And we ended up doing a road trip through Liguria, and we didn't go to the famous places. We went to places that a lot of people had never heard of, but they were amazing and less crowded, and the food was great, and they were still beautiful. Of course, it's on the coast of Italy. Like it's not going to be beautiful. So that's how I typically find some lesser known places, is just happenstance and looking through places on Airbnb that are like, okay, let me look based on the photos rather than the location.
That's lovely. And then one of your posts, you were saying like, a lot of people will keep asking you like, what's it like, or how do you do this, like moving all over.
Yeah.
Um, and I really liked that you're like, don't over romanticize it because it's still everyday life. You still have to go get dog food, you still have to go
Yep.
get a prescription refilled, and then you're often in another country that speaks a different language than English. So you sort of and a couple of posts because you are mostly in south of France, so it's mostly French. Um, and it's true because I've been there. Where like by the time you translate the language into your head to English and then you have to do it and then they've moved and they're like, "Oh my God, what do you want?"
Yes. Yes.
And you're like, "No, I really want to try." And they're like, "That's nice for you. Try later. What do you want?"
Yeah.
So I really, it's the realistic version. I'd be like, I still work, you know? I'm like, I'm not,
Yep.
I haven't, I always say I haven't taken a vacation in years, but I still enjoy my time. Yeah, I went to the Acropolis this morning, but the time difference, because I work US hours, I'm here. There's no regrets. So can you kind of share your perspective of that? Yeah.
I think it's really important to not over romanticize travel or life abroad. I think, especially on social media, you see all these beautiful photos and reels of like pastel colored buildings and people walking to the market with their little basket and like just shots of the sea. And like, yes, that is all beautiful, but my daily life is not like having lunch at the beach and carrying my little basket from the market back. I wish it was. That would be amazing. But yes, going to the vet and dealing with things like that. Like you mentioned, going to the pharmacy, and then it's 3 times more exhausting trying to figure out how do I say what I need in French. And then there's a follow-up question I wasn't expecting. And then I have to try to translate that real quick. And if I'm lucky, they'll switch to English. If not, then, I have to maybe pull out Google Translate, or even just like the administrative stuff dealing with a prefecture or understanding, what time you have to be somewhere only to show up there and then like be waiting there for 3 hours. So life here is great. I'm so happy to be here and I really do love it. But I do think people underestimate the realities of real life when you're living abroad. Like you still are doing all of those things that you're doing at home. And sometimes it's even more tiring because you're doing them in another language or, with traditions or customs that are unfamiliar to you that you have to figure out. I also think people underestimate how much you kind of feel like an idiot living abroad and how comfortable you have to get with that. Like, you
Yeah.
might do something or say something that's totally normal where you're from, but is considered rude or very strange in your new country. And you don't realize it till after the fact, and you start to reflect on it. So I think that's another thing I've had to really learn is just like get comfortable being like, I might sound like an idiot when I go and try to, do whatever I need to do today. And I just have to accept that.
That's true, and I sort of have a bit of not an insecurity, but like a chip on my shoulder when you say you're an American and people are like, "Oh, the Americans." But I'm like, "No, I want to learn." And I was
Yeah.
talking to I was living in Thailand, and a Danish Turkish guy was telling me, I was like, listen, I was in Denmark and I was in Netherlands, and it was an election year for you guys. So I wanted to talk to you guys about the
Yeah.
election so I could learn, but no one wanted to talk to me about it. They only wanted to talk about US politics. And I'm like, nope.
Yeah.
So don't tell me we're selfish. I'm trying to learn. And they're like, no, no, no. What it is, we don't talk about politics, but we're fascinated by US politics because you guys will openly talk about it. So it was a different mindset. I was assuming that they just thought, let's not talk about us. Let's talk about
Right.
you because, let's just focus it on you. It was just a different cultural thing, which is like, it's just not proper for us to talk about politics, but Americans don't mind it. So let's just concentrate on their politics. Like it was a different, and I'm like, oh, no, that's stupid. So kind of thing. And
I
because
know
he was
I've had that
Turkish,
too. Yeah.
he was a little bit more friendlier, like more
Yeah.
open. So then we did start talking about, I'm like, so then why do you guys have a purple party? He's like, okay, I'll tell you about this purple party kind of thing. So that was a little bit more flexible just to educate myself. But it was
Yeah.
really interesting. Most people, there's been no issue. But those small little things where it was like, I hope they don't think that we're stubborn and we think everyone should speak English. We don't. I really wanted to learn. So,
I think most people do understand that. Like there are the stereotypes, of course, but most people that I've encountered, they don't think that, all Americans are dumb or all Americans, are self-centered or
Right.
they understand. They also travel other places and maybe don't know the language and have to figure out, how to communicate too. So I think for the most part, people do get it. Other than being loud, that is the one thing I hear over and over again is like
We are
Americans are
loud.
loud. And I admit that's true.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That is true. Um, we're passionate, is what I say.
Yeah.
Which we fit right in Italy and Spain, sometimes
Yeah,
France
yeah,
even.
exactly.
But when you go up north, not so much.
Yeah.
So, um, I was gonna ask you, what I also liked, is you do cater your guides. So if someone wanted to get in touch and be like, I want to go to Turkey or I want to go to England and stuff like that, and you have a Q and like frequently asked questions, and you
Yeah.
go, it's not AI written. Um, so, and also that you've done a lot with your dog. How did you decide on those two things? If we were like, no, it's going to be the human element. It's my, because I'm going to text to my
Yeah.
friend. And two, the journey of like, we're going to take Bindi with us and not leave him with a sitter.
Yeah. So my philosophy is like I don't want to pretend to be an expert on places I'm not an expert on. So I think there's a lot of people who will just visit somewhere for a weekend and then be like, "Oh, here's the guide on all the best things to do in X city." And that's not me. That's not what I want to do. Even though I lived in Amsterdam for 3 years, I didn't try every restaurant in Amsterdam. So I still don't even feel like I can say these are the best restaurants in Amsterdam.
Mm.
But that's why I say these are the places I reliably go to and would recommend, and these are the places I would text a friend if they're going. And that's kind of like my ethos for the stuff that I put out there. It's stuff that I can wholeheartedly recommend after trying multiple times, but I'm not going to say it's the absolute best thing in the world because I just don't feel like it's fair to say that when I haven't tried everything. And I also only write guides for destinations that I feel like I truly deeply know, because I don't think it's fair for me to write something on a place I've only been for a few days and, I probably don't fully understand everything there. So that's the type of work that I try to put out. And yeah, then Bindi is a lot of it too. So when we moved to Europe, we realized how easy it is to travel with her compared to when we were in the US. It's pretty hard to travel anywhere with a dog outside of the US. But in Europe, we can travel with her by car, by train, by boat, even we've done. And I think that it's really awesome for us because we get to experience all these things with her. And I think a lot of other people would like to do that, and just it might seem overwhelming to figure all those things out. So I love to share the things I've learned that have made it easier. And we've made mistakes along the way too, and putting those out there I think could just help other people if they want to travel with their dog.
Um, you were also sharing with me that you guys had an interesting learning experience where you thought your car was stolen. Do you want to share
Yeah,
that?
sure. We were in Rome. It was on the way back from actually a massive road trip we did where we drove from Amsterdam all the way to Istanbul, and then down through the coast of Turkey. Yeah, we were making our way back up to Amsterdam. We had stopped in Rome for a few days, and our Airbnb host had told us you can park on the street here, no problem. So that's what we did. We parked
Mm.
where they had instructed us to park. It turned out, well, one day we came back to the car just to grab something and the car wasn't there anymore. And we immediately freaked out, assumed it must have been stolen. Um, Texted the Airbnb host. We're like, do you have any idea? You told us we could park here. In the end, it turned out that there's a market there on Sunday mornings, and Sunday mornings is the only time you cannot park on that street. So the
Yeah.
car was towed, not stolen. It took a couple hours to actually figure that out. We went to the Italian police station and we're like Google translating with the police officer. And then we remembered we had an AirTag in the car. So we showed him where the AirTag was and he was like, oh, okay, it was towed if it's here. And so that was a big learning from that trip is like, keep an AirTag. And we AirTag all our suitcases and everything anyway. And we just happened to have one in the car that day. So AirTag the car, AirTag everything, because without that, I'm not sure how we would have figured out where the car was.
I mean, that reminds me of when I lived in New Zealand and in Auckland, and I picked up my mom at like 5 in the morning, and I didn't want to wake up our host family, so I took her to a cafe and stuff, and I parked. We always go to this one cafe, and all that stuff. Her passport, traveler's checks that they brought to help me, her luggage, all of that stuff still in the car. And then we go and get to the car, and it's gone.
Oh no.
And I flip out. I don't know why, but I call my dad back in the States, and he's like, "What the hell do you want me to do about it?" He's like, "Go call your boss." I'm like, "Oh yeah, that's a good idea." I call my boss in Auckland. He's like, "Wait, where are you?" And I'm like, "At such and such cafe." And he's like, "What street?" And I'm like, "On this street." He's like, "Look below. Is there that stupid line that's like that really, really light blue?" And I'm like, "Yes." And he's like, "That's a towing zone."
Oh my
I don't
God.
know why they do that. No one ever notices it. It's so tricky. And I'm like, "Oh my God, you think it got towed?" And he's like, "I think it got towed." And so we went to the towing zone, and thank God it was there.
Yeah.
And so everything was fine. But it was that one, like 20 minutes of freaking out. We're like,
Yep.
yeah. So, um,
Yeah, especially when you're gonna have to try to explain this in another language. Like, I don't
yeah.
know how to do that. Same situation. Like, there were no signs on the street saying that like on Sundays you can't park. There was literally no indication. You just
I
had
know.
to
In
know.
Italy, I've lived in Rome, and those cops are not that helpful also.
Yeah,
I've been there, but
thankfully,
they're like,
they were okay, but
"Oh,
yeah,
that's good." And it's
yeah,
smart, having that AirTag or some way of tracking it. Some of those newer models have something like that, but
yeah.
oh yeah. Or you'd be like, "Mindy, smell for the car."
I know,
All of
right?
a sudden,
Search.
she's like a track dog.
Yeah.
So, we're almost done. I was gonna do a bit of a lightning round
Sure.
for the travel ones. Okay, what is in your like carry on that you usually have that most people don't think of?
Oh, well, probably dog bags because we don't want to be stuck anywhere without doggy bags for Bindi. Um, I'm trying to think if there's anything else unusual. Yeah, it's probably dog bags, dog treats, all the
Fair.
dog related stuff. A
Yeah,
dog bowl. I always have a bowl that I clip onto my
that's.
purse.
Where is a place that you've been to and you're like, don't need to go here again?
Hmm, good question. I think for me, Genoa, Italy. We stopped there driving through the coast, and I'm glad that I saw it, but there was nothing, I ate some good food, some good pesto, that there's nothing compelling me to go back.
Fair. And you sort of have touched on this on your Substack, Alex and Beyond, but places that most people have not thought of or or to do and things like that. But if you could give your top thing, what would you recommend that people often neglect that they shouldn't?
For destinations, I think,
Yeah.
don't pass out or don't miss out on the smaller towns. I'm here in the south of France. I live in Nice, but what's really nice about here are all of the small towns around here. There's a town called Bundul, which is about an hour and a half away, closer to Marseille. And for me, that's one of the best discoveries ever. It's just this beautiful beach town with nice sandy beaches. All the restaurants are like impeccable. They're amazing. The food's amazing. It's small and cute, but has everything you need. So that's where I always send people in the south of France that they haven't heard of before. Oh, and there's great wine there too. Bondol wine is amazing.
Good to know. I mean, I don't drink, but yeah, good to know for others.
Yeah.
um, but is there anything that we haven't touched on that you'd like to share about tech or about travel, about your site?
I think just if you're interested in travel, whether it's, on your own or with a dog or living abroad, like whatever the situation is, I think if it's something you're really interested in and that you want to do, just give it a try. I mean, when I first moved
Yeah.
abroad, I had been in London for 3 days before I decided to move there. So it was a little bit scary, but at the end, you can always come home if it doesn't work out. Or if you're on a trip and, it's not everything you expected, eventually you'll be home. So just try to live in the moment. Don't be scared to try something new, even if it's your first time doing it. I think, travel can be scary for some people, but it's if there's a place you want to go, just go and do it. Like, don't let the fear hold you back.
That's great advice. That's so true. Thank you so much, Alex.
Thank you. It
And
was great to
I
chat.
will share your YouTube and your Substack for sure in the show notes. And until next time.